Hello YouTubers, Ram55 here, and tonight I'm going to go over some stuff that I've been playing with in Trainz lately. I've been working on my route that I've been designing for quite some time and making some good progress on that, but I also started to look into the CMTM system, which is the Car Management and Transportation system. You can read about it online at CMTM4 right now. And in order to test out some stuff for AI Trainz, I developed a two-board baseboard, just a simple oval with a small yard, some industry, some passing tracks, and two portals down at the south. But it's also a loop, so I can do continuous operation if I need to. But this will allow me to fairly quickly try out some commands for AI Trainz, which I have not done before. So I know there's a fairly steep learning curve in this process. It's a lot of trial and error, but I thought maybe if I could share some of the things that I've learned over the last couple days, might make your job a little bit easier. I know there's some really good sites out there. Phil Schemes in particular has some great tutorials on how to do things, and there's others as well. But anyways, I'll give it a shot, see if you guys can find this useful. So this is the route. Basically, there's a couple portals down here as well as some staging yards. Excuse me. And then it's basically an oval, and it can go out of this portal here and go counterclockwise, and then it'll go out of the southern portal this way and go clockwise. And let's take a look at what those look like. So basically here's one portal here. That's the one that I describe as portal west. The next one right above that, the next piece of track, is portal east. Those tracks will go counterclockwise. Portal west will go clockwise. And then I have 3 staging yards so that I can set up trains without having to generate them from the portal, and it makes it easier and quicker to test out some AI commands. So let's get into some real basic stuff first, and we'll get into some signaling, which is kind of a really mystical type thing for most people who don't get into trains a lot. So the first type that we're going to look at are these two right here. They're both showing red right now. They're a US type 4, and that means it's a signal used when you have a route that's converging. You can see a route from the left that's merging into the route here on the right, and that's where you have a 4, and there's one signal for each of those tracks, and it tells you whether or not you're clear to proceed. So moving forward up to my mini yard, we have a class 4 right here ahead of a class 2, and a class 2 rather than converging is for a diverging route, and there's 2 types of those. There's diverging to the right and diverging to the left, and as you can see up here, the yard diverges off to the right, so we want to use a type 2 without the L prefix. In fact, let me just call that up real quick. There's a signal USA 2, and that's what that one is. If it's diverging to the left, you use the USA left 2. So this one tells us, it's another 4. It tells us the signal ahead is red because it's yellow. It's, in other words, be cautious when you're proceeding, because you're going to have to stop before the next signal. And these will change, obviously, when there's a train on the route. Okay, so going up to the route itself, I've got a couple of these invisible speed limits. This one is actually kind of interesting. When we click on it, let me see if we can call that up real quick. It gives us the option to have different speeds depending on which way the train's going. So right now we've got it set up so the speed limit, when the switch is to the left, and you can see the green arrow is pointing to the left, it's the normal track speed limit of 40 miles an hour. If the switch is put over to the right, the speed limit is now 15 miles an hour. I want the trains to be going slower when they're in the yard. So 15 mile an hour is the yard speed limit. Now, turning this around, let's just get out of here for right now. And let's take a look and see what that's called. It's called the invisible speed limit signal, invisible speed signal, in case you want to download it. TR4 SP2, but it works perfectly well here in Trainz 12. Let's spin this around, and over here we've got it set so that it doesn't have a option. It's just when trains come out of the yard, I want them to speed up to the track speed limit, which is 40 miles an hour, and they wouldn't do that until they pass a speed limit sign. So this tells them, since they're limited to 15 miles an hour coming out of the yard, that they can go back up to 40 miles an hour after they cross that point. Now the other thing about signaling is you have to have signals from both points. Now this one is a 2 heading into the yard with a 4 preceding it, telling you what the next signal is. And this is just another 4 because it's a converging route with the yard. Now this red block here that looks kind of like a Christmas package is, see if we can identify it. It's called a junction link. And let me just hit the question mark. And this tells me that junction 354, this one right here, is linked to junction 352, which is the junction down at the other end. So when you throw one of those switches, it automatically changes the opposite one. So why is that valuable? Well, if a train's coming through on the main line, we want them to not turn into the yard, so the switch on this side will be for straight through, and the switch on the other side will also be for straight through. And I've got it set up for asymmetric because you can see that when this one is switched to the left, its opposite number is switched to the right. So looking at it from this direction, it's switched to the right. So you can see that all these switches are in opposite directions. They're all facing to the outside here. So this one's going to the left and its opposite number is going to the right. This one's going to the left, opposite number going to the right, and so on down the road. These I don't have linked because I want them to be operated independently if you're having a train go in there. And the same thing on the main line. So if it's coming down the main line here and this switches to the right to stay on the main line, this one has to be switched to the left. And if I come over here and switch them, now you'll see that switching here automatically changed that one down there. And same thing with all these up here. They are linked. So if you change one, or the AI train changes one, it changes them both. And the reason that's important, if say you have an AI train coming up and you want them to take this yard track right here, if this switch is thrown to the opposite direction of that one, the AI train can't see a route out, and it will slow down and proceed very slowly down that track. However, if it has a route and these switches are in alignment, it will see a green path all the way through and travel at a faster rate. So that's why I did that. So basically this is a very simple 4-yard track. It's got these 2 spurs over here just so I can have the AI trains kind of see what it takes to get them to go in there. And then as we exit the yard on the other side, now we come back over here and we're back on the main line. We have a similar situation here as far as speed limits are concerned. I want them to accelerate from the yard limit of 15 back up to 40, so that's what that signal right there does. And again, you'll see that if I switch this, the speed limit changes from 40 to 15 based on the direction of this switch. So if they're going down the main line, they stay at 40. If they're going into the yard, they slow down to 15. But if they're coming out of the yard, they're limited to 15 until they hit another speed limit sign, and that's why I put that one there. Now, in addition, I put a whole bunch of marks in here, and those are just marks to tell me where I'm at or where I can send AI to, and you can call them whatever you want. But I've got one mark on each end of the yard track, one at the far end of this what I call pocket, and there's a pocket on either side. So that is the basic yard and the function of those things. I set this switch here. Actually, we'll get rid of that. We don't need that one. I've got cameras set up around the track as well, just to give me some practice on doing those things. Now, going over here into an industrial area, again, we've got a type 4, which just tells us that there's a signal up ahead that's telling us we have to proceed with caution. There's a type 2, and again, because it's branching off to the right, that would just be a type 2. its opposite number will always be the opposite type. So we got another 4, but now we've got a 2 left because it branches off to the left. Similar thing over here. We got what could be a passing track, but it's also like a lead so that the AI Trainz can park some cars in these industries right here. And once again, I've got speed limits, just as I did for the yard. When the switch is thrown to the siding track, it slows the trains down to 15. And if it's going straight through, they go through at the normal train speed. Now at the end of this little spur here, I have some invisible track. That's what that blue marker is. Let me get out of that so you can see it a little bit better. This blue track here is invisible track. When you're in the game, you don't see that at all. But that allows me to put this marker further off the track. If I put the marker over here, the AI Trainz would come up and stop well short of that marker. They wouldn't come all the way down to the end of the track. So by putting the invisible track here and this track marker on the invisible track, the AI Trainz can actually come further down this spur and park spot cars where they need to next to that industry. Same thing on the other end here. Trains coming out of the siding will be limited to 15 miles an hour, but once they hit that mark right there, they accelerate back up to the line speed of 40. Now this is simply a passing track. There's no industries here. It's got the same markers. It's got a 4 preceding this signal here, so it tells me to use caution. There's a signal that you have to perhaps stop for. So when you get to this one, you'll find out whether you can proceed or not. This is another 2. This one going to the right would be just a plain 2. We got the speed limit signs here, the invisible speed limit signs as we did before. The regular one to allow them to accelerate coming out of that passing track. This one here is also dependent on that switch, so it's 25 miles an hour versus 40 for the main line. Some more track markers. These are simply the 4s that are telling us that the track is converging, whether you can proceed or not. Same thing down at this end. We have a couple more 4s, some more track markers, speed limit signs. This is a 2 diverging to the left, so it would be a 2L. If you go straight, that takes you into the portal and off the layout. If you go left, it takes you over to this, another passing track. It's set up a little bit differently. If you look at it from overhead, rather than be a simple straight through and then this passing track branches off the main, you can see that depending on which way you come from, it looks exactly the same. So the main will take you onto this route if you're coming in from that direction, and the main takes you on the opposite track if you're coming in from the opposite direction. So it's a little bit of a different setup, as you can see from this angle here. The main is connected to the track on top here, and the main is connected to the track on the bottom here. So I just wanted to see how AI Trainz and if there was any signaling problems with that. So that's basically the layout. And through a lot of trial and error, I actually got some things to, some AI Trainz to operate the way I wanted. So let's go ahead and I'll show you how that works in the next video. That's just a real brief overview of this test layout that I put together.